up to another good morning. Time to go. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for adventure. We are
Welcome back to the 3x5 Live
podcast.
We break down one thought in 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes a little longer than 5 minutes as of late. But the last 2 weeks we talked about productivity. That's going to be a constant topic on this podcast. But today we're going to move a little away from that and we're going to talk about movement. A few weeks back we spoke about morning routine, and obviously one aspect of morning routine is movement. And what movement looks like to Jessie is totally different to me. And movement is personal. It needs to fit within the framework of your personality. And that's what we kind of wanted to shine a light on, not just, hey, movement's important, but really understanding why you have a hard time keeping up with movement or making it an ingrained habit.
All right. So when I think about, I've actually been reading this book. It's called Change Your Schedule, Change Your Life. And this is a prescriptive book that kind of takes in the idea of biorhythms, chronobiology, Ayurveda, and it looks at movement and how you can make it a personalized journey for yourself.
Right.
And so in the idea of movement, in Ayurvedic terminology, everybody's bodies are a little bit different, and what fuels one person or brings joy when it comes to movement can be completely different for somebody else. And so for me, my movement journey has looked different throughout different stages of my life. And it took me a really long time to kind of zoom out and recognize what is the best type of movement to serve me and my goals, whether that be just to feel good, to get energy. I feel like I always come back to, I want to have energy. I used to do those beach body workouts after school, Sean T and my colleagues at school, we would meet up in one of our classrooms and do those 30-minute to 45-minute workouts. And yeah. I would dread, the workout itself. And I found that I was usually complaining about something that would happen, either my knees or whatever. But we would do them and suffer through them. I loved the social aspect, but I definitely didn't like the wear and tear that it did on my body. And when I talk to my graduate students about movement, one of the things I ask them is, what is the form of movement that you used to do when you were a child? And it's really interesting to see the responses that I get, because a lot of people are they either go towards the competitive sports where they like that feeling, the game. Yeah. And so that might be something that you like to do, maybe join an adult league, right? Or maybe you are doing a leaderboard with a spin class or something. And that feeling of competition and competing against others is something that helps you thrive in movement. That was not for me, right? So maybe like me, I loved to dance and I loved gymnastics, and I did play soccer, but I loved the flow and the gracefulness that comes with something where I move my body in kind of a fluid manner. So it doesn't.
So that means Jessie signed us up for salsa dancing.
No, I did not. But that's actually something I really have been talking about doing recently. That's when I started to really dig deep into yoga. And so for me, yoga became my happy place, and it brought me so much joy. And exercise and working out felt a lot less like a chore and more like I get to do this. I since have gotten my yoga teaching certificate, and I love bringing yoga to students and to, teachers in my grad classes. And I used to teach at a studio pre-COVID. And it just feels really good for me. So I guess my challenge is to think about, where are you happiest in movement? There's a book by Kelly McGonigal called The Joy of Movement, where she actually talks about when you're in that flow, there's these molecules that are in our muscles that she calls hope molecules, and using movement as a form of not just physical health, but mental health. And when you're in that flow state with what you're doing, that's when you hit those benefits. One of the other pieces that I wanted to mention about this book that I thought was super interesting was the importance of moving your body first thing in the morning. So we talked about morning routine, and both Bryan and I do have a form of movement in that morning routine. The book mentions that if you're thinking it from an Ayurvedic standpoint, when you're sleeping, all of your systems in your body almost become sticky. So your respiratory system, your digestive system, your circulatory system. And when we tap into prana, which is our breath, so if you're doing anything that increases your breath, you almost taking a toothbrush, brush out those channels and clear them out first thing in the morning so that you have more energy, your metabolism is moving, you're more connected to your breath, which therefore helps with stress reduction and cortisol. And, they even suggest doing it before some types of meditation or mindfulness because you're able to focus more on your breathing, and then that monkey mind is less active after you do something where you're moving your body. So I found a lot of value in that, and it's helped me kind of think back to those intuitive forms of movement and listening to your body. Another resource that I teach about a lot is through the blue zones. If you're not familiar with the blue zones, that's Dan Buettner's work. And, he studied these areas of the world that have the largest amount of centenarians, so people who have lived to over 100 years old. And something that he found that was consistent between all of these different areas were that people move naturally.
Yeah, gardening or just walking to a friend's house.
It's a social thing. It's something that we do when we're a child. Never ever when you're younger do you think oh, I gotta go out and run my mile or lift all these weights. You just all day long. I was just joking about our kids and how sometimes they have one speed where they run everywhere. So that movement is just the natural way that they move their body because it feels great. If you've ever tried to sit too long with a kiddo, they need to get up and they need to stretch and they need to move around. And it's their body's telling them oh, get up and move. And as we get older, we become more sedentary. And then we think that, we put in that hour workout every 2 days or whatever. And we're oh, box checked. So my third challenge is, the first was working out earlier, right? Trying to get that morning and flushing out your systems. The other one was finding that movement that gives you joy, that brings you joy and happiness. Maybe it's something playful, like you're going for a hike this week, or, you're going to a group class or something that just feels fun. In fact, this actually reminded me, and this is a squirrel moment, but one of my teachers that was in my grad class, I challenged them to do this. And a couple of her colleagues, she really loved dancing. So going back to dancing. So they started doing country line dancing workouts in her classroom after school. And she reached out to me separately and was like, this was so much fun, and it's the first time that I felt excited about exercise in so long. She's like, we laugh the whole time. She's like, but I also sweat, and it's it's been such a joy for her, and that is such a win for me because that's exactly what I'm asking you to do. And then that third piece is just find ways to move naturally, go outside and play with your kids, or chase them around the and play tag or freeze tag or some of those games that we used to play when we were younger, or go for a walk and just enjoy nature, maybe out on a hike or something, or I don't know.
Yeah, and it's how we define movement and how we define exercise. I think there's so much negative connotation there where try something for 30 days of, if you're you're beating yourself up if you don't go to the gym, but maybe it's going for that walk with your significant other or that hike that you actually enjoy. And then you look forward to the event, and then it makes the habit sticky. So it's almost I challenge you to do that for the next 30 days, and you're going to do that more often than maybe going to the gym 2-3 times a week. So if you're going for a hike 4 or 5 times a week or whatever that movement activity is, then you're going to reap the rewards of the consistency of it.
One of the times that I felt the most healthiest in my life, just to reinforce what you just said, was I did with one of my girlfriends a 100-day workout challenge. And part of the idea of that was to give yourself permission for it not to be a high intensity type workout. So there were days where I knew that every day I had to do something to move my body. And so it took that mental fatigue of am I going to work out? Am I not going to work out? Let me make 65 excuses of why I can't work out, because I knew I had to do something. And so I found creative ways to move. I would count going for a walk into town to grab a coffee. I would count doing some gentle stretches as right before the kids go to bed. And I would count these things that, because I knew that I had to move, I got really creative about what that looks like. And so it was just something that might be of interest to you, that 30 days that Bry's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing that's beautiful or drew us to working together on 3x5 Life Project is how similar we are, but how different we are. So movement looks very different to me. So on next week's episode, we're going to dive into what movement means to me, the things I tap into, what drives me to move, which looks different to Jessie, and that's okay. So we hope you enjoyed this podcast and got a few nuggets out of it. So,
we'd love for you to interact with us on the community page and maybe offering some ideas around what were those types of movements that you loved as a child and how have you brought that into your adult world of movement and exercise. And if you haven't, what are some ways that maybe you can connect those two together?
Yeah, exactly. And also on the private community page, we're starting to do a Friday
Woohoo!
card share. So we're trying to encourage people to share like the win for the week or their favorite card for the week where they felt like they were in flow. And not only it's neat to celebrate together, but also just to kind of see how people are using the card. Mm-hmm. So it's been fun. We just started that last week. So if you haven't joined the community, please do.
All right. I hope you have a great week.
Hello world, wake me up to another good